The March wind pressed against the windows of Ashby Grange. Margaret heard it first as a thin whistle in the chimney, then as a steady scrape along the slates. She set down her mother's law book and listened. The fire had burned low. A draught slid across the floor and caught the hem of her grey wool dress. Margaret rose. Her left hip protested, as it had every morning for 13 years. She took the cane that leaned against the chair and crossed to the hearth. Her right sleeve caught on the bracket of the fender. She tugged it free. The scar beneath the cloth pulled against her wrist, the way it always did when the cold came down off the downs. A carriage was on the drive. She had not expected one. The vicar's wife had said the word last Sunday, loud enough for the back pew to hear. Poor Sir Henry, to have a daughter so lame. Margaret had heard the word 1,000 times. She had stopped flinching at it by 12. She still heard it. Her father came in without knocking. Sir Henry Ashby was 63 and grey to the lips. He held a letter in his shaking hand and a brandy in the other. "They have come for you," he said. Margaret looked at the letter. "Who has?" "The Duke of Halston, the Charter Duke. His man is on the drive." Sir Henry sat down heavily and put the brandy on the side table without drinking it. "Margaret, there is a marker. From your christening day. I signed it." She did not move. The fire crackled. The wind scraped along the slates. "A marker," she repeated. £3,000 to old Lord Halston, to settle the gambling debt. I pledged your hand, Margaret. I did not think the marker would ever be called." His voice cracked. "I have been a poor father. I know it. I have been the worst kind of poor father." Margaret watched him. Her cane rested under her right hand. The scar beneath her sleeve felt hot. "The marker is dormant," she said. 24 years dormant. Mother's book said any pledge of person dormant past a generation is void at common law. Master of the Rolls says otherwise. Sir Henry would not meet her eyes. He found the marker in a chancery archive. He revived it. He says the Duke must take it up or forfeit. The Duke has taken it up. She crossed to the window. A black travelling coach stood on the drive with the Halston arms painted on the door. A liveried man held the horses. The wind lifted the man's coat. "Why?" Margaret said. "Why what?" "Why has he taken it up? A duke does not collect £3,000 markers in person. He sends a solicitor. He does not come for the bride." Sir Henry would not answer. He drank the brandy then, in a swallow, and set the glass down with a click. "You leave today, Margaret. By his order. A licence is already drawn. The wedding will be at his chapel in Sussex. Tomorrow." She did not weep. She had not wept since she was 11, not since the carriage fire, not since she had crawled out with Thomas in her arms, and her own forearm burning through her sleeve. She had used up her tears that night. "Where is Thomas?" she said. "In the stable, with the horses." "Bring him in. I will tell him myself." Sir Henry went. Margaret stood at the window and watched the liveried man hold the horses. The scar on her forearm pulsed under the wool. She did not understand why a duke would come. She did not understand why now. She did not understand any of it. She understood one thing only. The marker had been signed on her christening day. She had been 3 weeks old. She had not yet had a limp. She had not yet had a scar. She had not yet had any quality at all that could be measured. She had been only a name on a parish register, and a debt against a column of ink. She had been a transaction since the day she had been baptized. She turned from the window and went to pack her mother's law book. Thomas came in. He was 17 now, tall with their mother's wide grey eyes. He looked at her face and understood without being told. "No," he said. "Yes." "He cannot. The Duke cannot. You are my sister." "I am also a name on a marker, Thomas. Help me pack the books. Father will not." Thomas helped her. He carried her trunk down to the hall himself because the footman was old and the housekeeper was crying. Margaret limped behind him with the cane. The grey wool dress was the best she had. She did not have a wedding gown. She supposed the Duke would not care. At the door she turned and looked at the long hall of Ashby Grange. The plaster was peeling above the door-frame. Her mother had died in the room at the top of the stairs. The marker had been signed in the study to her left. She had been promised away in the study to her left when she was 3 weeks old. "Mr. Hartwell," she said to the liveried man, "I am Miss Ashby." He bowed. He did not look at her cane. He did not look at her sleeve. That was a courtesy she had not been shown in Hampshire in 13 years, and she marked it. "His Grace's carriage is at your disposal, Miss Ashby." "His Grace is not in it." "No, Miss Ashby. His Grace is at Halston Court. He awaits you there." She climbed the carriage step. Thomas climbed in behind her. The door shut. The wind scraped along the gravel. The horses pulled. She did not look back at Ashby Grange. The Halston solicitor was waiting in the drawing-room of a posting inn at Petersfield. His name was Mr. Combe. He had a leather case open on the table and 4 documents laid out in a row. He stood when she entered. He bowed to her cane. "Miss Ashby? Mr. Ashby?" He gestured at the table. "His Grace has instructed me to present the contract here before you cross into Sussex. He does not wish you to enter Halston Court as a stranger to its terms." Margaret limped to the table. Thomas stood at her shoulder. The fire in the grate was high. The wind had dropped. She set her cane against the table and read the first document standing. It was the original marker. The ink was brown with age. Her father's signature shook across the bottom in the hand of a young man whose name had not yet been ruined. £3,000, signed at Ashby Grange, the 12th of June, 1813. "Read the second, Miss Ashby?" She read the second. It was a licence under the Archbishop's seal. It named her. It named Edmund Ravensworth, 6th Duke of Halston. It named the chapel at Halston Court, in the parish of West Hoathly, county of Sussex. It was dated tomorrow. The third. She read the third. It was a deed of settlement. £12,000 were settled on her in her own name, free of her father's debts, and free of her husband's debts. The income from a small estate in Berkshire was settled on Thomas Ashby of Ashby Grange, gentleman, until his majority. Sir Henry Ashby was named nowhere. Margaret looked up. Mr. Combe's face was a blank. "My father is not provided for." "His Grace's instruction, Miss Ashby. Sir Henry is not a party to this marriage." She read the fourth. It was the contract itself. 3 clauses. The first acknowledged the marker and accepted Margaret's hand in satisfaction of it. The second was a clause she did not recognise. "His Grace shall, on the day of solemnisation, present to the Garter King of Arms at the College of Arms a certificate of marriage. The certificate shall name a lady of demonstrated valour under flame. The certificate shall satisfy the charter of the Halston dukedom dated the 8th of March, 1689. Margaret read it twice, then a third time. "Mr. Combe." "Miss Ashby. What is a lady of demonstrated valour under flame?" Mr. Combe glanced at the door. Mr. Combe looked at the fire. Mr. Combe wet his lips. "His Grace will explain that to you himself, Miss Ashby. I am not at liberty." "I am not at liberty either, Mr. Combe. I am promised by a marker I was 3 weeks old to refuse. I will read this clause before I sign it." "What is it?" He inclined his head. He spoke very carefully. "The Halston dukedom was granted by William III under a peculiar charter. The charter requires every successor to marry, before his 33rd birthday, a lady whose person bears the recorded proof of having braved fire. Failing such a marriage, the dukedom escheats to the crown." The fire crackled. Thomas drew in a breath. Margaret did not look at her brother. She looked at the contract. "His Grace's birthday." "The 22nd of April, Miss Ashby. 47 days hence." "And the recorded proof." Mr. Combe was silent. Mr. Combe. "His Grace has been searching, Miss Ashby. 4 months, provincial newspapers. He found one account that matches the clause." Mr. Combe folded his hands. "The Hampshire Chronicle, March of 1811. An 11-year-old girl pulled her brother from a burning carriage on the Winchester Road. The brother was named Thomas. The sister was named Margaret Ashby." Thomas made a small sound behind her shoulder. Margaret did not turn. "He came for me," she breathed. "He came for you, Miss Ashby. The marker was the lever. The master of the rolls revived it. His Grace took it up because the marker permitted him to come for you publicly, without alerting the master to his real intention." His real intention. to satisfy the charter and keep the duchy out of the crown's hand. Margaret was silent a long moment. The wind had risen again. The fire pulled in the grate. The marker on the table was 24 years old. The licence was dated tomorrow. The contract gave her £12,000 in her own name and made her father a stranger to the document. "Sir Percival Whitcomb," she said, "Master of the Rolls. He revived the marker." "He did, Miss Ashby." "He is suppressing the charter." "His Grace believes so." "For what end?" "His Grace believes the Master intends the dukedom to escheat to the crown. The Master would purchase the escheated lands at a discounted sale for his nephew. The Master has suppressed the charter for a decade. His Grace believes it." Margaret turned the contract toward her. She read the 3 clauses again. She took up the pen. "Miss Ashby." Mr. Combe touched the table. "His Grace instructed me to tell you. If you refuse the contract, the marker is void. He will not pursue it. You may return to Hampshire tonight." She paused with the pen above the paper. "And the dukedom." "Escheats to the crown on the 22nd of April." "And his Grace." "Loses the title, loses the estate, becomes a commoner with a cane and a stack of newspapers." Thomas was staring at her. Mr. Combe was looking at the fire. The wind had picked up across the Petersfield rooftops. Margaret signed the contract. Then she signed the deed. Then she signed the licence. She did not sign for love. She signed because a man had read every provincial newspaper in England for 4 months and had not asked her to be beautiful. He had asked her to be exactly what she was. She handed the pen back to Mr. Combe. "Tell his Grace I will see him in his chapel tomorrow." "Yes, Miss Ashby." "And Mr. Combe." "Miss Ashby." "Tell him I have read my mother's law books on the Charter of Flame. I have read everything she had on William III's peculiar grants. I will see him in the chapel. After that, we will have a conversation." Mr. Combe bowed. He bowed lower than he had bowed when she came in. The marker burned in the grate that evening at Margaret's request. She watched her father's signature curl and turn black. She did not weep then either. The chapel at Halston Court was small and very old. The oak panelling was the colour of strong tea. A single iron candelabra stood beside the altar. The candles were lit, 6 of them, though it was mid-morning, and a clean spring light came through the east window. The light fell on the stone floor in a pale square. Margaret stood at the chapel door in the ivory gown. Mrs. Penrose had found it in a trunk in the long gallery, a gown of the dowager's mother, never worn, packed in linen. The sleeves were long and the lace heavy. Mrs. Penrose had drawn back the right sleeve at the wrist and pinned it. The burn scar was visible from the cuff to the elbow. Mrs. Penrose had pinned it there deliberately. "His Grace asked it, Miss Ashby," she had said. "He said the chapel must see the proof." Margaret had not argued. She had limped down the long gallery on her cane with the right sleeve drawn back and the scar showing in the morning light. Now she stood at the chapel door. Thomas was beside her. Mr. Combe was inside with a magistrate from Lewis. Mrs. Penrose stood at the back pew with a prayer book. The Halston chaplain waited at the altar. The Charter Duke stood beside the altar in a deep navy tailcoat. His left hand rested on a black walking cane. His hair was dark and unpowdered. He was 32 and ink-stained at the cuff. He did not smile. He did not speak. He watched her cross the chapel floor with her cane and her limp and her scarred arm in the candlelight. Thomas walked her up the aisle. He was 17 and not her father. He did it because their father had refused to come. At the altar Thomas paused. He looked at the Duke. He spoke loudly. "My sister is lame," Thomas said. "She is scarred. She pulled me out of a fire when she was 11, and she has been called lame and scarred for 13 years. I will give her to you because she has asked it. If you ever shame the words I have just used, I will know." The Duke met Thomas's eyes. He inclined his head. "Mr. Ashby," the Duke murmured. "I will not." Thomas placed Margaret's hand in the Duke's hand. The Duke's fingers were cold. The ink was on his cuff. He turned her toward the chaplain. The vows were short. Margaret repeated them in a steady voice. The Duke repeated them in a voice she could not quite read. When the chaplain pronounced them married, the Duke turned to her and lifted the half-veil from her face. He did not kiss her. He cupped her jaw from below with his right hand. His thumb rested at her cheekbone. He looked at the scar on her forearm where it pressed against his coat. "Margaret," he breathed, "Your Grace." "Edmund," she did not say it. The magistrate signed. Mr. Coombs signed. The chaplain signed. Mrs. Penrose signed as witness. Thomas signed. Margaret signed Margaret Ravensworth, and the ink caught on the fresh paper. The Duke did not take her arm. He bowed and gestured her out of the chapel ahead of him. Mrs. Penrose held the chapel door. The spring light fell across the stone yard. The cane was steady under Margaret's right hand. They crossed the yard to the long gallery in silence. The gravel did not crunch under his cane the way it did under hers. He walked slower than he might have. He matched her pace. In the gallery he stopped beside a portrait. The portrait was very old. It showed a man in a restoration wig holding a parchment sealed in red wax. The painted parchment said, "Charter of Flame" in gold letters, and below it the year 1689. The Charter Duke looked at the portrait, not at her. "My grandfather's grandfather," he said quietly. He took the dukedom from William III. He took it under the clause. Did his bride brave fire? She had pulled a child from the kitchen at Halston when a chimney caught. The College of Arms entered her name on the heraldic roll as a lady of demonstrated valour under flame. The clause was satisfied. It has been satisfied in every generation since, until my brother. Lucienne! Lucienne! The candelabra in the chapel was still burning behind them. The gallery was cold. Margaret leaned on her cane and felt the limp deep in her hip. "You will sleep in the south wing, madam." His voice was steady. "Mrs. Penrose has prepared the rooms. I sleep in the north. We will dine together this evening. Tomorrow morning at 8 I will come to the long gallery and I will lay before you the documents that brought me to you. I owe you that, before any other word is spoken between us. Your Grace." "Edmund, please." She did not say it. She inclined her head. He bowed. He turned. He limped back along the gallery with his cane. She watched him go. The ink stain on his cuff caught the morning light. Mrs. Penrose came to her elbow with a soft step. "Madam, the south rooms are ready. There is tea." "Thank you, Mrs. Penrose." "He asked me to put a writing desk in the long gallery, madam. He set out on it last night a stack of bound newspapers 3 feet high. He said you would want to see them." Margaret looked down the long gallery. The desk was visible at the far end, beneath the Charter portrait. The stack of newspapers was visible on it, 3 feet high, 4 months of reading, England in 8 months of provincial print, narrowed down to her name in a clipping from March of 1811. "Thank you, Mrs. Penrose," she breathed. "Tea, please, in the south rooms, and bring me my mother's law book from the trunk." "Madam?" Margaret limped to the south wing. The candlelight from the chapel was behind her. The newspapers were ahead of her. The scar on her arm did not pulse. The cold in the gallery was steady. She had never been called Madame in her life until that morning. She did not sleep. She sat up most of the night in the south rooms with her mother's law book and a single candle. Mrs. Penrose brought her bread and broth at midnight without being asked. Margaret ate. She read. The Charter of Flame was a peculiar grant. Her mother's casebook mentioned it. William III had issued 7 such grants between 1689 and 1701. 6 had been allowed to lapse, and the duchies had reverted. The Halston grant alone had been preserved across 9 successions by careful marriage. The clause was real. The escheat was real. The 47 days were real. Margaret slept 3 hours before dawn and rose at 7. She dressed in dove grey. She drew her sleeve back at the wrist herself this morning. She took her cane and walked to the long gallery at 8. He was already there. He stood at the desk with the newspapers behind him. The bundle was on the desk now, untied. 4 documents. He gestured her to the chair. She sat. He did not sit. He stood with his hand on the cane. "Madam, I will speak as plainly as I can." "Edmund," she said. He paused. His mouth did not smile, but the corner of his eye moved. "Edmund," he repeated. He sounded as if he had not been called it in years. He laid the first document before her. The Charter of Flame, 1689, the original parchment with the 7 seals. He laid the second beside it, a folded clipping from the Hampshire Chronicle, the 18th of March, 1811. He laid the third, a small leather-bound diary in his brother's hand. He laid the fourth, the original christening day marker, brown with age, the same one Margaret had burned at Petersfield. She looked at the fourth and looked up. "You kept a copy?" "My solicitor kept the certified copy. The original was at Ashby Grange. You burned it. I did not say you should not." He met her eyes. "The marker was the means. I have no use for it now." "Edmund." "Margaret. Tell me why." He sat then. He sat in the chair across the desk and laid his cane across his knees. He held his hands together. The ink was still on his cuff. "My brother refused the charter," he said quietly. "Lucien loved a woman who had never been near fire. He would not name a substitute. He said he would not marry a woman he did not love merely to satisfy a clause of an inheritance. He died at 33 in November of last year. He left me the dukedom and 47 days. I am 32. My birthday is the 22nd of April. You read newspapers?" "I read every provincial newspaper printed in Britain since 1810. I read in the British Museum reading room. I read at Halston Court at this desk. I read for 16 weeks. I found 4 accounts of women braving fire. One was dead, one was a servant, not a gentlewoman, and the charter requires a lady of marriageable rank. One was married already. The 4th was you." He pushed the clipping toward her. She unfolded it. She read it. "On the 17th of March, Miss Margaret Ashby of Ashby Grange pulled her brother from a burning travelling carriage. Miss Ashby was 11 years of age. Master Thomas Ashby, her brother, was 4. He was unharmed. Miss Ashby sustained a burn to the right forearm and an injury to the hip. Miss Ashby is reported in steady recovery at her father's house." Margaret put the clipping down. She placed her right hand flat on the desk. The cuff was drawn back. The scar was visible in the morning light. "You came for the scar," she said. "I came for the woman who made the scar," he answered. "I came because no one in England other than you can sign the heraldic certificate honestly. I came because you alone qualify. I will not pretend you were chosen for anything else, Margaret. I will not lie to you on the 2nd day of our marriage. My limp. Your limp is in the clipping. The injury to the hip. The College of Arms will accept the limp and the scar as evidence of valor under flame. The Garter King of Arms will sign the heraldic roll. The Master of the Rolls will be defeated." Margaret was quiet a long moment. Then she picked up the diary. She opened it. She read 3 pages. Lucian Ravensworth had a small, slanting hand. He had loved a woman named Cecily who had never been near fire. He had loved her enough to die a duke unmarried. He had written the last entry 6 weeks before he died. "He says here," Margaret murmured, "that the charter should be amended." "He does. He says here that the charter ought to be amended by Act of the College of Arms to permit any honest marriage to satisfy it." "He does. You agree?" "I agree." She closed the diary. She set it beside the clipping. She placed her hand on the original 1689 parchment. She read the clause again. Then she read the dormancy clauses of 17th century crown grants in her head, because her mother had taught her to. "Edmund, the marker my father signed, was void." "I thought so." "It was void at common law 21 years after my christening. It expired in 1834. The Master of the Rolls revived a void instrument. He revived nothing. He revived an unenforceable instrument and dragged me from Hampshire on a writ that would not stand a day in any common law court." "I know it, Margaret." "Then why did you not say so?" "Because the marker brought me to your door without alerting the master to the charter. If I had refused the marker on grounds of voidness, the master would have understood that I knew of the charter and was seeking you. He would have suppressed the charter from the College of Arms before our wedding could be entered on the heraldic roll. The marker was a stalking horse. I used it to reach you publicly. I will not use it again." She looked at him. The ink on his cuff, the cane across his knees, the newspapers stacked behind him 3 feet high. You read every provincial newspaper in Britain for 4 months. I did. You did not advertise. I would not have you respond to an advertisement. You came yourself to Hampshire. I sent Mr. Hartwell. I would have come myself if you had refused the carriage. You watched me cross the chapel floor on a cane this morning. I did. You watched me cross with my sleeve drawn back. Mrs. Penrose drew the sleeve back at my request. I asked her to do it. I asked her because the chapel and the magistrate had to record the proof for the heraldic certificate. I did not ask it to humiliate you. I asked it because the charter requires the proof to be visible at the ceremony. You walked at my pace in the yard. I have a cane, Margaret. We walk at the same pace. She was quiet. The candle in the gallery had burned down. The morning light was high now. The scar on her forearm did not pulse. The cold in the gallery had lifted with the sun on the stones. Edmund, Margaret, your charter has a defect. What defect? Clause 4. The proof must be entered on the heraldic roll within 40 days of the marriage. We were married yesterday. The master of the rolls will file something to stop the entry before 40 days have passed. He will? What will you do? I will go to the College of Arms with the diary, the clipping, and the original charter. The Earl Marshal will convene a registration hearing. The Garter King of Arms will sign. The master will be exposed. I have written to the Earl Marshal already. The hearing is set for the 11th of April. 11 days before your birthday. 11 days. Edmund, Margaret, you will go with me. Not without me. I have read the charter. I have read the diary. I will speak at the hearing. I have a competence at this. My mother trained me at it. I am not coming to Halston Court to be displayed at the College of Arms. I will speak. He looked at her. His mouth did not smile, but the corner of his eye moved again. Madam, he said quietly, I had hoped you would. She laid her hand on the clipping. The ink had faded. Her name was still on it. The Charter Duke watched her hand on the clipping. The ink stain on his cuff was the same colour as the ink on the clipping. He had read for 4 months to find her name. She understood it now. Edmund, she said, I would like breakfast. Mrs. Penrose's housekeeper bread. I am hungry. He stood. He bowed. He limped down the gallery to find Mrs. Penrose. Margaret watched him go. The cane was steady in his left hand. The bundle of newspapers was steady behind her on the desk. The scar on her forearm did not pulse. They worked together for 9 days. The long gallery was their workroom. Mrs. Penrose brought them tea and bread and broth. Thomas rode to the British Museum with a note in Edmund's hand and brought back 2 more documents. Mr. Combe came down from London twice. The Halston solicitor came once and stayed 3 nights. Margaret read everything. She read the 1689 charter in the original. She read the dormancy law on Crown grants. She read the procedural rules of the College of Arms. She read her mother's casebook until the binding cracked. Edmund watched her work. He did not interrupt. He brought her candles when the light failed. He set a stool under her feet when her hip ached in the evening. He did not touch her. On the 4th night, she touched him. She had risen from the desk, and the gallery was cold, and her cane was on the wrong side. She stumbled. He came up under her elbow without thinking, and she put her right hand on his sleeve to steady herself. The scar pressed against the ink stain. He did not move his arm. She did not move her hand. She straightened, slowly. She did not take her hand back. Edmund. Margaret. Tell me about Lucian. He told her. He told her in pieces across the next 3 nights by the long gallery fire. Lucian had been the elder, the heir, the bright one. Lucian had loved Cecily Marbury. Cecily had never been near fire. Lucian had refused the charter on a point of principle. He had ridden home from London in November. He had taken a fever. He had died in 3 days. Edmund had not been told about the charter until the will was read. He had inherited a dukedom and 47 days. He had not slept. And you did not consider a substitute, Margaret said. She was sitting at the desk. The candle was at her elbow. I did consider it. And there were 2 women in London whose families would have agreed to a charter marriage. One was 19, one was 22. Both had never been near fire. The Master of the Rolls would have challenged the certificate on the heraldic roll within a week. Both women would have been publicly humiliated. I would have lost the dukedom anyway, and ruined 2 girls in the process. So you read newspapers? I read newspapers. You read newspapers. I read newspapers, Margaret. She put down the pen. She looked at him across the desk. The fire moved on his face. The ink stain on his cuff was 4 months old and never quite gone. Edmund. Margaret. I am sorry your brother died. I am sorry your father signed the marker. The candle pulled in the draught. The gallery was very quiet. Somewhere in the south wing, Mrs. Penrose was banking the kitchen fire for the night. Thomas was asleep upstairs. Margaret reached across the desk and laid her hand on Edmund's wrist, on the ink stain. He looked at her hand. He did not move. Edmund, I have a competence. My mother gave it to me. I am going to use it for you. For us, Margaret. For us. Yes. He turned his wrist and his hand caught hers. He did not lift it. He held it on the desk between them. The candle pulled in the draught. I came for the woman who made the scar, he said again, very quietly. I will not pretend otherwise, but I have stayed for the woman who reads the charter. Edmund. Margaret. That is not a love declaration. No, it is something. It is something. I will take it. He smiled then. It was the first time. It was a small smile at the corner of the mouth that did not last long. He let her hand go, and she let his go, and they went back to the documents. The candle pulled in the draught. Outside the gallery, the spring rain began on the slate roof. The next morning they had 2 visitors. Mrs. Penrose announced them. Mr. Combe was the first. He came with a letter. The second was a young man in a chancery clerk's coat. He did not give his name. He gave a writ. Margaret took the writ. She read it standing at the gallery door. Edmund stood beside her. Thomas stood behind them. The writ was filed by Sir Percival Whitcomb, Master of the Rolls, in the Court of Chancery. It moved the court to void the marriage of Edmund Ravensworth, 6th Duke of Halston, and Margaret Ashby of Ashby Grange. It moved the court to seize Margaret Ashby as a ward of the Court of Chancery. The ground was that her father's debts had passed to her at her marriage. The writ named her an insolvent ward of the Crown. It listed Sir Percival's nephew, a Mr. Whitcomb Greaves, as nominal petitioner. It set a return date for the 8th of April, 3 days before the heraldic hearing. Margaret read it twice, then she folded it. Edmund. Margaret. He has moved against us. He has. He has chosen the 8th of April for a reason. He wants me held as a ward of Chancery on the 11th, when the heraldic court convenes. He will hold me in a chancery room 3 days while you appear at the College of Arms alone. He will have me silent during the heraldic hearing. He will challenge the certificate on the ground that no wife was present at the registration. He will. The Master cannot file this. He is the Master of the Rolls. He cannot file his own writ in his own court. The procedural rule forbids it. He must use a nominal petitioner. He has, Mr. Whitcomb Greaves. His nephew? Yes. His nephew Edmund is the same nephew who will purchase the escheated dukedom at a discounted crown sale if the heraldic certificate is not entered. He is. Edmund, we have him. The conflict of interest is on the face of the writ. The Master's nephew is the petitioner. The Master himself is the judge. We will show the writ at the heraldic hearing. The Earl Marshal will register the conflict. The Master will be exposed before 3 heralds and stripped of his office in the same chamber. She looked at him. Her hand was still on the writ. Edmund looked at the writ and back at her. Margaret. Edmund. How long have you known how to do this? Since I was 13. My mother taught me from her casebook. She wanted a daughter who could read law. She had no money to give me. She gave me her books. I've been reading them for 11 years. Margaret. Edmund. Madam, he breathed. He took her hand off the writ and lifted it. He turned the wrist gently and laid his lips to the scar. He did not look at her face. He did not say anything else. The kiss was very brief. He set her hand back on the writ. She did not weep. She had not wept since she was 11. She did not weep then. But her hand on the writ was not steady. Edmund saw it. He did not look at her face. He understood she did not want him to. "Mr. Combe," she said evenly, "we will leave for London tomorrow. I will need 3 things. Madam?" A room at His Grace's London house, a clerk to copy the writ, and the original of the Charter of Flame packed for travel. "Yes, madam." "And Mr. Combe?" "Madam." "Send a man to Sir Percival's chambers with a card. My card, the new card, the Duchess of Halston, Halston House, Mayfair. He may know I'm coming." Mr. Combe bowed. He did not smile, but he bowed. The Charter Duke stood by the gallery window. He watched the spring rain on the slate. The cane was steady under his left hand. The ink on his cuff was the same colour as the writ. Margaret watched him from the desk. He turned and she saw him as Edmund for the first time. Not the Charter Duke, not his Grace. Edmund, 32 and ink-stained, and the cane balanced under his left hand. A man who had read every provincial newspaper printed in Britain for 4 months to find her name. A man who had laid the documents in her hands the morning after the wedding. A man whose lips had touched the scar. A man who had not looked at her face. He had understood she needed not to be looked at then. Edmund. She would not say it aloud yet. She thought it once, clearly. The thinking of it was enough. They reached Halston House in Mayfair on the 2nd of April. Thomas came with them. Mrs. Penrose came with them. Mr. Combe came with them. The Halston solicitor met them at the door. Margaret did not rest. She set up the library as a workroom that evening. The original charter, the clipping, the diary, the writ, and a fresh-copied affidavit lay across a long table. The Halston solicitor sat at her left. Mr. Combe sat at her right. Edmund sat across from her. For 6 days they wrote. They drafted a reply to the writ. They drafted an affidavit for the Earl Marshal. They drafted a memorial to the Garter King of Arms. They prepared a précis of the dormancy law of crown markers for any common law judge who might be asked to opine. On the 7th day, Sir Percival sent a note. It was hand-delivered to Halston House at noon. It was addressed to the Duchess of Halston. It was sealed with the rolls-keeper's seal. Margaret broke the seal. She read the note. She handed it to Edmund. "Madam," it read, "your father's debts to Mr. Whitcomb Greaves stand at £4,600, and have done these 6 years. As a married woman without a settlement, these debts pass to your husband. As a ward of the court, they pass to the Crown. I shall see you on the 8th of April in the Master's chamber. P. Whitcomb." Edmund read it. He set it on the table. His mouth did not move. "The settlement, madam, was lodged at Doctors' Commons on the day of our wedding. The settlement is on file." He knows it is on file. He is testing what we know. He is. "He is also threatening you, Edmund, not me. The debts pass to my husband," he writes. "He is reminding you that you have something to lose." "I have something to lose?" "You will lose the dukedom on the 22nd of April, unless we hold the registration on the 11th. He is trying to make you offer him the dukedom in exchange for withdrawal of the writ." "He is?" "You will not." "I will not." Edmund. Margaret. "He has miscalculated. He thinks I will not appear on the 8th because I will be afraid of the Chancery Room. I will appear on the 8th. I will appear with you. I will appear with the original charter, the writ, the rolls-keeper's seal on this note, and the conflict of interest objection drafted in my own hand. He will not have me as a ward of Chancery. He will have me as a duchess with a legal argument." Edmund looked at her across the table. The library candle was at his elbow. The ink on his cuff was fresh today. "Margaret, the Chancery Court is a public court. The galleries will be full. You will be looked at." "I have been looked at since I was 11, Edmund. You have been looked at in Hampshire, not in London." "I have a cane and a scar. I will have them in London too." "You will." Edmund. "Madam." "Do not call me madam." Margaret. "Yes." He stood and crossed the library. He stopped beside her chair. He put his right hand on the back of her chair and the cane on the floor. He did not touch her hair. He did not touch her shoulder. He stood very close. "Margaret, if you would rather stay at Halston House on the 8th, I will go to the Chancery Court alone. I will not have you in a room with that man if you cannot bear it. I can bear it. Margaret. Edmund, I have been called lame for 13 years in Hampshire, and I have borne it. I will not be called a ward of Chancery in London, and I will not bear that. I will be in the court, with you, on the 8th. He stood by her chair a moment longer. Then he sat down beside her and laid his cane across his knees. He did not touch her. He sat very close. The candle pulled in the draught from the library window. Outside, the Mayfair street was loud with carriages. The 8th of April came. The Chancery Court was full. The gallery was packed. Sir Percival Whitcomb sat in the master's chair in his rolls-keeper's robe. He was 61. He was clean-shaven. He had a long jaw and small eyes. His nephew, Mr. Whitcomb Greaves, sat at the petitioner's table with a young barrister. Edmund and Margaret entered together. Margaret walked on her cane. The right sleeve was at her wrist. The scar was visible. The gallery murmured. Margaret limped to the respondent's table and sat. Edmund sat beside her. Mr. Combe sat behind them. Sir Percival called the matter. He read out the writ. He spoke smoothly. He stated that the writ moved the court to void the marriage. He stated that the writ moved to seize the Duchess of Halston as a ward of Chancery. The ground was her father's insolvency. He turned to Mr. Combe. Mr. Combe, for the respondents. Mr. Combe rose. He bowed. He spoke briefly. The settlement was on file at Doctors' Commons. The debts did not pass. The writ should be dismissed. Sir Percival smiled a thin smile. Mr. Combe, the settlement is a question for the trial. The writ moves to seize the Duchess pending trial. Pending trial, she is a ward of this court. I move to so order. He lifted his pen. Margaret stood. The gallery murmured. The master's small eyes moved to her. He had not been told the respondent would speak. He had assumed the respondent would have a barrister. My Lord Master, Margaret said clearly, I object to the writ on the face of it. Madam, the master's voice was thin, you are not a member of the bar. I am the respondent. I appear in person. I have a right to be heard on a procedural objection. She held up the note. It was folded. The rolls-keeper's seal was visible on the wax. My Lord Master, the petitioner in this writ is Mr. Whitcomb Greaves. He is the nephew of the presiding judge. He is also the name purchaser of the dukedom of Halston in the event of escheat on the 22nd of April. The writ is filed by the petitioner's uncle. The presiding judge is the petitioner's uncle. The conflict of interest is on the face of the writ. It is admitted by the rolls-keeper's seal on this note. The note was sent yesterday by the presiding judge to the respondent. She handed the note to the usher. The usher carried it to the bench. The master did not take it. Madam, Sir Percival began. My Lord Master, I move that the matter be removed from the rolls of this court. I move it be referred to the Lord Chancellor for reassignment. The ground is judicial conflict. I move further that the rolls-keeper's seal on the note be entered as evidence. The gallery had gone still. A clerk at the side bench scribbled rapidly. Sir Percival's hand moved on the desk. The pen was no longer above the paper. Madam, the note is private correspondence. The note is sealed with the rolls-keeper's seal. The rolls-keeper's seal is the seal of this court. The seal cannot be private correspondence. The seal is evidence by its very impression. Madam, Sir Percival's small eyes flicked to the gallery. My Lord Master, I move further that the heraldic court of the College of Arms convene as scheduled. The date is the 11th of April. The matter is the registration of my marriage to the Duke of Halston. I move that this court take no further action pending the heraldic court's decision. A voice from the gallery called out, Hear, hear. Another voice from the petitioner's table. Sir Percival's hand closed on the pen. Madam, I shall consider. My Lord Master, you shall consider in writing. A presiding judge whose conflict is on the record may not rule from the bench on the day. The procedural rules of this court forbid it. The matter must be adjourned for written argument and reassignment. She was reading from her mother's casebook. She had marked the page that morning. She had drafted the language in the library at Halston House at 3 a.m. 2 nights ago. Edmund had read it once and had said nothing because she had been right. Sir Percival set the pen down. He looked at the gallery. He looked at the clerk. He looked at the nephew at the petitioner's table. The nephew would not meet his eye. "Adjourned," he said thinly, "for written argument. Reassignment to the Lord Chancellor on application." The gallery murmured loudly. The usher cried for silence. Margaret sat. Her cane was steady under her right hand. Edmund's hand was on her left wrist under the table. She had not felt him take it. They left the Chancery Court at 2:30. The Mayfair light was high. The crowd in the lobby parted for them. Mr. Combe walked behind them with his case under his arm. In the carriage, Edmund did not speak for a mile. Margaret. "Edmund, you read law. I read my mother's books. You will speak at the College of Arms on the 11th. "I will." Margaret. "Edmund, you are the woman who reads the Charter. I am also the woman who made the scar." "You are both." "Yes." He took her right hand and turned the wrist on the carriage seat between them. The cuff was at her wrist. The scar was visible. He did not lay his lips to it this time. He pressed her hand once and let it go. "The 11th, he said. "The 11th. The carriage rolled into Mayfair. The cane was steady on the floor between them. The bundle of documents was on the seat opposite. The Charter Duke was no longer the Charter Duke. He was Edmund. She thought it again. She did not say it aloud. She would say it aloud at the College of Arms. The College of Arms stood at the corner of Queen Victoria Street. It was a Restoration building of warm brick. The Earl Marshal's privileged chamber was on the second floor. The room was low-ceilinged and panelled in dark oak. 3 heralds sat at a long table beneath a painted shield. The Garter King of Arms sat in a tall chair at the centre. The Earl Marshal sat at the right hand of the Garter. Margaret limped into the chamber on Edmund's left side. The cane was steady in her right hand. The right sleeve was at the wrist. The scar was visible in the chamber light. She wore a plain, dark blue gown. She wore no jewels. Mrs. Penrose had braided her hair and pinned it close. Sir Percival Whitcomb was at a side table. He had come uninvited. He carried a writ. He intended to file a stay. Mr. Combe sat behind Margaret and Edmund. The Halston solicitor sat beside Mr. Combe. Thomas Ashby was in the gallery at the back of the chamber. So was Mrs. Penrose. So was a barrister Margaret had not engaged, who had read the Chancery transcript and had come on his own to listen. The Garter King of Arms called the matter. In the matter of the Halston Charter, this court convenes to register the marriage of Edmund Ravensworth, 6th Duke of Halston, and Margaret Ravensworth, born Ashby. The certificate has been filed. The proof of the lady's qualification under the Charter of Flame has been filed. The court will hear the certificate read. A herald rose. He read the certificate. The chapel at Halston Court, the 17th of March. The names, the magistrate, the witnesses, the Hampshire Chronicle clipping of March 1811, the right forearm, the hip. Sir Percival rose. My Lord Garter, I move a stay. A chancery writ stands against the Duchess of Halston. The matter is sub judice. The heraldic court cannot register a marriage that is sub judice. The Garter King of Arms inclined his head. Sir Percival, show me the writ. Sir Percival handed the writ up. The Garter read it. He passed it to the Earl Marshal. The Earl Marshal read it. He passed it to the senior herald. The Earl Marshal raised his eyes. He was a man of 60 in a black coat. He had a grey moustache. He looked at Sir Percival levelly. Sir Percival, this writ was adjourned by the Chancery Court on the 8th of April for written argument on the ground of judicial conflict. The Chancery Court has registered the conflict on the record. The matter is not properly sub judice. The matter is in administrative limbo, pending reassignment by the Lord Chancellor. I do not consider a writ in administrative limbo to be a bar to heraldic registration. Move on. Sir Percival's face did not change. He sat. My Lord Garter, I move further that the Duchess of Halston address this court on her qualification under the Charter. Margaret stood. She did not wait to be invited. She stood with her cane, and she limped 3 steps to the centre of the chamber. She faced the long table. She did not bow. She inclined her head. My Lord Garter, my Lord Earl Marshal, my Lords Heralds, I am Margaret Ravensworth, born Ashby. I am 24 years of age. I was 11 in March of 1811. She drew the right sleeve back herself. She did not look down. She held the forearm out at chest height in the chamber light. The scar ran from her wrist to the inside of her elbow. It was 13 years old. It was the colour of old ivory. I pulled my brother Thomas Ashby from a burning travelling carriage on the Winchester Road on the 17th of March 1811. He is in the gallery of this chamber. He is now 17 years of age. He is alive. Thomas stood in the gallery. The heralds turned and looked. Thomas inclined his head to the garter. He sat down. I sustained a burn to the right forearm. The burn is visible in this chamber. I sustained an injury to the right hip. The injury is permanent. I walk with a cane. The cane is in my right hand. I am also, my lords, the woman named in the Hampshire Chronicle clipping. The Duke of Halston laid that clipping before me on the morning after our marriage. He confessed he had read every provincial newspaper printed in Britain for 4 months to find my name. He came to my father's house with a marker as a stalking horse. He came for me. He did not come for status. He did not come for an heir. He did not come for protection. He came because I am the only living gentlewoman in England who satisfies Clause 4 of the Charter of Flame. He came so that his brother's refusal should not cost the dukedom. He came so that my limp and my scar should not be wasted on Hampshire society's contempt. The chamber was silent. My lords, I submit to this court 3 documents: the original Charter of Flame, the Hampshire Chronicle clipping, the diary of the late Edmund Ravensworth, 5th Duke of Halston. The diary records His Grace's reasons for refusing the charter and his request that the charter be amended. She set the 3 documents on the herald's table. The senior herald received them. He passed them up the table. My lords, I submit also a 4th document. She set the note on the table. The wax seal of the rolls keeper was visible. This note was sent by Sir Percival Whitcomb, Master of the Rolls, to me at Halston House on the 7th of April. It is sealed with the rolls keeper's seal of the Court of Chancery. It demands of me my father's debts as a married woman without a settlement. The settlement was on file at Doctors' Commons 3 weeks prior. Sir Percival knew it was on file. The note was a threat. The threat was an attempt to extort a withdrawal of the Halston marriage. The price would be forgiveness of a debt that the Crown had no claim to. The petitioner in the Chancery writ is Sir Percival's nephew. The nephew is the named purchaser of the Halston dukedom in the event of escheat on the 22nd of April. The Master of the Rolls has suppressed the Charter of Flame in the Chancery archive for a decade. He has done so to engineer the escheat for his nephew's profit. He has used the powers of his office to seize an inheritance for his own family. He is, my lords, before you now. She turned. She faced Sir Percival. The Earl Marshal's grey moustache moved. He spoke quietly. Sir Percival, have you a reply? Sir Percival rose. He was very pale. My lord, Earl Marshal, this is calumny. I deny it. I shall require the lady to prove every word. Margaret answered before the Earl Marshal could. Sir Percival, the note is on the table. The seal is yours. The nephew is yours. The Chancery writ is in your nephew's name. The dormancy clause of the marker you revived expired in 1834. You revived a void instrument. You did so to bring me to London on a writ that could not stand. You did so because the Charter of Flame, which you have suppressed for 10 years, was about to defeat you. You did so because the Duke of Halston had found me before you could prevent it. I do not require to prove it further than the documents on this table. They prove it for me. A herald murmured. The Garter King of Arms folded his hands. Sir Percival, the Garter said quietly, I have read the diary of the late Duke. The diary names the suppression. The diary names the year. The diary names your office. The diary was written before the late Duke's death and is entered in this court's record as of 3 minutes ago. The certificate of marriage will be entered on the heraldic roll. The Halston dukedom is confirmed. The charter will be amended at the next session of the college on the request of the present Duke and his lady. As for you, Sir Percival, the Earl Marshal and I shall confer. The Earl Marshal stood. Sir Percival Whitcomb, you will surrender your seal to this court. The College of Arms will write to the Lord Chancellor before sundown. You will not return to the rolls. You will face such further proceedings as the Lord Chancellor and the Privy Council determine. Leave the chamber." Sir Percival did not move at first. Then he laid the seal on the herald's table. He took up his hat. He limped to the door of the chamber. He did not look at Margaret. He did not look at Edmund. He left. The chamber was very quiet a long moment. The Garter King of Arms turned to Margaret. "My lady, approach." Margaret limped to the long table. Edmund stood and limped beside her. The two canes were quiet on the dark oak floor. "The certificate is entered. Halston is confirmed. The college records its thanks to the lady for the clarity of her case." He stood. He bowed to Margaret. The Earl Marshal bowed to Margaret. The three heralds bowed to Margaret. Margaret inclined her head. She did not bow. She could not, on the cane, but she would not have anyway. Edmund turned to her in the centre of the chamber. The Garter King of Arms was still standing. The Earl Marshal was still standing. The heralds were still at the long table. Thomas was in the gallery. Mrs. Penrose was in the gallery. Edmund laid his cane against the herald's table. He took both of Margaret's hands in his own. He did not cup her jaw. He did not lift her chin. He stood in the centre of the chamber with both her hands in his. "Margaret." "Edmund." "I love you." His voice was steady and unhurried. The Garter heard it. The Earl Marshal heard it. The three heralds heard it. The gallery heard it. "I came for the woman who made the scar. I have stayed for the woman who reads the charter. I love both of them. I will love both of them, Margaret. I will not pretend otherwise to you or to anyone else. I love you." Margaret looked up at him. Her cane was steady in her right hand. His hands were warm around her own. The chamber light was on his ink-stained cuff. "Edmund," she breathed, "I am lame." "You are." "I have a scar." "You have." "I am lame, and I am scarred, and I have been called both for 13 years. "You have." "I do not want them called away from me. They are mine. They are yours." "I love you, Edmund." "Margaret." "I have a knee," he said quietly. "Shattered at Waterloo. I walk on a cane. I am lame too. I have never said it aloud. I say it now. We are lame, Margaret. We will walk together at the same pace, as we did across the chapel yard." She did not weep. She had not wept since she was 11. She did not weep then. But she held his hands in the centre of the Earl Marshal's chamber. She did not let them go for a long moment. The Garter King of Arms sat down again at the long table without speaking. The Earl Marshal sat down. The three heralds sat down. The chamber waited for them. When she let his hands go, she limped on her cane to the herald's table. She gathered her 4 documents. She passed the diary to the Garter King of Arms. "Keep the diary," she said. "It is Lucien's. He wished the charter amended. I will draft the amendment. I will deliver it to this court by Michaelmas." "My lady?" "My Lord Garter." She turned. Edmund offered her his right arm. She did not take it. She placed her left hand on his sleeve gently, in the way of a wife in a public chamber. He inclined his head. They walked out of the Earl Marshal's chamber together. The 2 canes were even on the dark oak floor. In the lobby of the College of Arms, Thomas Ashby was waiting. Mrs. Penrose was waiting. Mr. Combe was waiting. Thomas reached for Margaret, and Margaret pulled him into a one-armed embrace and held her brother against her shoulder a long moment. "Lame," she said softly into his hair. "I am the Duchess of Halston. I am lame, and I am scarred. The college has written it." Thomas did not answer. He was 17, and he had been the boy in the carriage. He held his sister, and he did not answer because he did not need to. The long gallery at Halston Court was warm. It was the 1st of May. The east windows were open. The chapel candles were burning on the altar in the next courtyard, though no one had asked for them. Mrs. Penrose had lit them at dawn. She said the chapel ought to be lit on the 1st of May at Halston. It was in memory of the lady who had taken the kitchen child from the fire in 1689. She said it was a tradition. Margaret had not contradicted her. Margaret sat at the writing desk under the charter portrait. Her cane rested against the desk. The right sleeve was at the wrist. The scar was visible in the morning light. She was writing. The draft was the amendment to the Charter of Flame. She had been drafting it for 10 days. The amendment proposed that the charter be satisfied by any honest marriage of a Duke of Halston, regardless of the bride's history with fire. The amendment proposed that the existing clause be preserved as a permanent honour, but no longer a condition. The amendment proposed that the dukedom not be put at risk again. Edmund came up the gallery from the south wing. He carried his cane in his left hand. He carried a cup of tea in his right. He set the tea on the desk at her elbow. Margaret. Edmund. How far? 3/4. The dormancy clause is the hard one. I am drafting around the 17th century statute that froze it. I think I have it. You have it, she smiled. She did not lift her face from the page. He leaned on the desk on his cane and read the draft over her shoulder. The morning light caught the ink stain on his cuff. The ink stain was very faint now. Margaret. Edmund. My birthday was 9 days ago. It was. The dukedom was confirmed. It was. The Master of the Rolls was stripped of his office on the 15th. He was. You have been the Duchess of Halston for 45 days. I have. Margaret. Edmund. I have not asked you whether you wish to live at Halston Court. She set the pen down. She turned her face up. The chapel candles burned outside the east window. The gallery was warm with the May sun on the oak. Edmund, I have lived in Hampshire as the lame bride of Hampshire for 13 years. I have lived at Halston Court as the Duchess of Halston for 45 days. I have not been called lame at Halston Court, not once. Not by Mrs. Penrose, not by Mr. Combe, not by you. You are lame. I am. I have not called it away. You have not. You called it yours, in the Earl Marshal's chamber. You called it ours. I did. Edmund. Margaret. I will live at Halston Court. I will draft the amendment. I will read my mother's law books in this gallery. I will dine with you in the long hall. I will sleep beside you in the north wing when you ask me. I will say so plainly when I am ready. I am ready, Edmund. I think I have been ready since the morning after the wedding when you laid the documents in my hands. He did not answer at once. He set his cane against the desk. He did not kneel. He sat in the chair beside hers. He took her right hand and turned the wrist on the desk between them. He laid his lips to the scar this time, as he had at the Petersfield writ, and this time he did look at her face. Margaret. Edmund. I love you. I love you. He did not say more. She did not say more. The chapel candles burned in the next courtyard. The May light was warm on the oak. The draft of the amendment was 3/4 finished on the desk. Mrs. Penrose came up the gallery with bread and broth on a tray. Madam, your grace, the chapel candles are lit. Will you walk to the courtyard? Edmund stood. He took his cane. Margaret stood. She took hers. They walked down the long gallery side by side. The two canes were quiet on the oak boards. The east windows were open. The May wind was warm. Margaret limped on her cane. Edmund limped on his. They walked at the same pace. At the chapel door, Margaret paused and looked back at the long gallery, the desk under the charter portrait, the draft of the amendment under the candle. The bundle of provincial newspapers, finely untied and stacked, was on the side table. Edmund had said the day before that he would send the bundle to the British Museum for the archive. Margaret had said she wanted to keep one paper, the Hampshire Chronicle of March 1811. He had said she could keep it. Mrs. Penrose had pressed it into a frame. Margaret turned to Edmund. The chapel candles were behind him. The cane was steady under his left hand. Edmund. Margaret. The lame Duchess of Halston. My wife. Both. Both. They walked into the chapel together. The candles burned in the iron candelabra. The light fell on the stone floor in a pale square. The wind did not scrape along the slates. The wind was warm. The fire in the grate at Ashby Grange was 3 days cold. The fire in the chapel at Halston Court was lit, and it would be lit every 1st of May, as Mrs. Penrose said it had been since 1689. Margaret laid her hand on Edmund's sleeve at the altar. The scar was visible at her wrist. The cane was steady in her right hand. Edmund did not lift the veil this time. There was no veil. He looked at her face in the morning light, and she looked at his. She did not weep. She had not wept since she was 11. She did not weep then. She did not need to.